So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start the formal welcome address, I just need to highlight that we have three ground rules which we scrupulously follow right from the inception of Chennai International Center from 2016. One is the welcome speech will not exceed 3 minutes. Second is concluding remarks will not exceed 2 minutes. And third ground rule, which is most important, is there will be minimum 25 minutes for audience participation. And of course, last but not the least, all mobile phones on silent mode or switch off. So, on behalf of the Board of Directors and the trustees of CIC, I welcome each one of you to this very important milestone event. I never realized that this is the 150th event of the Chennai International Center. Thanks to the dynamic leadership of Mr. Gopal Srinivasan, our chairman, unfortunately unable to be present here. He has an urgent meeting in Mumbai. I just thought that the journey, which is now 6.5 years old, is poised for much greater heights as we move along. Today is the 14th book discussion event, book release, book discussion, as you may call it. But it's a book discussion of a different sort. I think for the first time we are experimenting two books simultaneously being discussed. Tamil sollanona ore kalala rendu manga. That's what we are attempting to do. But we'll see how it goes. But we have two very distinguished writers. One is Mr. Satish Rao, a good friend of mine. I know him for 4 years, but it looks as if I know him for ages now. He is the CEO and Managing Director of Firmenich India. Firmenich is the world's largest fragrance manufacturing company in the privately owned sector. Satish has written a book, Can I Fly? He is a high flyer, but I must also admit to this audience here that his feet is firmly on the ground always. Very humble person, very result oriented. I sit in one of the joint venture boards of his company. It's an education to even listen to how he deals with issues. He's a Masters of Science and an MBA from Mumbai University. He's had three very interesting corporate careers. McCormick for a long period of time, Bayers, and now for the last 6 to 7 years with Firmenich. Satish is also a very avid golfer, and of course this book is already a bestseller and it's got a lot of ingredients which will excite all of us. I don't want to steal Jude's sort of role in this, but I would request all of you to put your hands together and welcome Satish. The second book author is R. Mukund. If I know Satish for 4 years, I know R. Mukund for 61 years. So he is also an engineer from MIT Crumpet. He started his career with Western Crompton Engineering back in the late 70s. He moved over to Media India, a very prominent machine tool manufacturing company. And finally with Grindwell Norton. And he's got three corporate careers just like Satish. He runs his own corporate training company. This is his second book and it is called Don't Sell, Make Them Buy. That's the title of the book. His earlier book, which was released 2 years back, was Above and Beyond. This current book also is threatening to be a bestseller. And Jude told me in somewhere along the line that there are a lot of similarities between the book, which I'm sure he will take us through. Mukund is also a very keen photographer. Actually, given a chance, he would grab that camera from his hand and start taking photographs. But he's not allowed to do that today because his role is entirely different. But this book also seems to have sort of caught the attention of the general public. So these two books will be discussed today. The icing on the cake is really Jude, sir. And Chatramoli actually said, sir, for this event, we have to get Jude. He will be the best moderator, and we went ahead and fixed Jude. An extremely erudite speaker, very good moderator. He is with CNBC now for several years. He heads the South operations across several verticals. And he put only one condition to me. I need the books 1 month in advance. I ensured it was delivered on October 24th. I have the acknowledgement. So he would have gone through line by line, word by word, page by page, ready to fire all his questions to book writers. So with this very brief introduction, I now hand over the proceedings to Jude. And I'm sure you'll have a very interesting session on these two books. Jude, please.
Thank you, Mr. Anand, and I hope I'm audible to everybody in the audience. Great. Firstly, I must say it's an absolute pleasure being here, seeing you, some familiar faces as well in the crowd. And I must say, I'm also very excited largely because I spent the last month, as Mr. Anand said, reading these books, getting to know not just what both these very, very accomplished writers have written, but also trying to understand a fair bit about the men themselves. And which is why I was, in fact, telling Mr. Satish today that it seems almost surreal that after spending a month reading, almost with several intervals in between, I actually get to meet both these gentlemen in the flesh. So let me say at the outset, it is an absolute pleasure, Mr. Satish, Mr. Mukund, to meet you both. I look forward to the next few minutes. I just want to say at the outset, all that Mr. Anand said notwithstanding, I am merely a background act. I want both gentlemen to get to the bottom of what it is that they've written both in Don't Sell, Make Them Buy and Can I Fly. I'm not sure how many of you have read these books, but at the outset, let me also say that if you haven't, you must. Great insights into life through very contrasting topics, no doubt. In fact, if I would quickly summarize, Can I Fly is all about the method and journey towards becoming a leader in every sense of the word that Mr. Satish has delved deep into, while Mr. Mukund has written in Don't Sell, Make Them Buy, um, all that you need to know to be a great salesman. And remember, sales isn't all about that profession that you might have. I think we wake up in the morning and we spend our lives selling things every day. Literally every step of our lives is replete with various modes of communication that we engage in that lead to a sense of conviction at the end of the day. And I think that is so important, in everyday life. So without further ado, let me start with Mr. Satish Rao. Can I Fly? It is a lot to do with your journey towards becoming CEO. I know you wanted to be one at the age of 45. Um, what made you get down and say, you know what, I need to do this and I need to write about how it is you can go about assimilating all these qualities that can make you a good leader?
Okay, thanks. First of all, thanks. And I think it's very humbling to hear what Anand said. It also speaks highly about the gentleman himself, who's been an amazing person and enjoy his company on the board of this joint venture. Now, to answer your question, Jude, is yes, every individual. I always keep saying that there's a story in every human being. There is a book in every human being, and everybody has some aha moments. Some time in life, say, wow, this hits you. And I should make an honest disclosure. I am not an author material. I still, my wife still doesn't believe that her husband is an author because I don't have patience. And this was just a COVID baby, like all of us have COVID stories. So locked up in a room, doing nothing to do, no golf, no parties. I can't eat the brains of my wife. That's not allowed. So what I do is I just lock myself in a room, started jotting, and that's where this journey began. Now, coming straight to the topic of this whole, what you mentioned about want to be CEO by the age of 45, it began with a very interesting story. I come, like many of us, I'm sure here, come from very humble background, stayed in a very humble dwelling, and my first job was at Bayer. And I still remember my first day in Bayer. We were asked as management trainees, there were 5 management trainees, had a one-on-one with the CEO. So it was my turn. I still remember I had a blazer which was obviously borrowed from my friend from mine because I couldn't afford a blazer. And then I still remember it was 17th floor of Express Towers overseeing the Arabian Sea. You all, if you know Bombay, that's the most breathtaking view that building has. And that is the first time I ever see a sea from a building. I'd never seen it, despite staying in Bombay for 20 plus years. So here I am with the CEO of this company. He just turns it back, large 6 feet 3 inches man, turns his back, talks for about 5 minutes. I was completely perplexed. Hello, hello, all that pleasantries. And I come back, and my HR lady is saying, Satish, you look very confused. You look completely bewildered. I said, yes, I am. You know what was my question? This person was a German, because as you know, Bayer is a German company. And I said, why is a CEO of a company in India a German? It is a bit humiliating, it is a bit insulting, it is a bit intriguing. He said, no, because it's a German company. I said, oh, okay. And that day evening, we all sat over a couple of mugs of beer there, management trainees nearby, and we were all exchanging our thoughts. And I said, you know what? It's a great company, nice people, great business. But something intrigues me. It almost pinches you as a patriotic person that they couldn't find one person out of 3 billion people to run this company in India? That's unfair. So that is when probably I just blurted out of my mouth saying that, you know what, if there's one thing I would like to chase is I want to be a CEO. He's 60 plus. I would like to be 15 years before this person, and I want to be CEO of a multinational company in the country of India, running this company here. I don't know whether it was the beer speaking or my passion speaking or just out of, but to cut short, that became my sole purpose in life. And it was 45. I did not, but 6 months later, we ended up my company. I was in US that time buying a company in India, and they said, Satish, you are nominated to run this company as a CEO. I almost had goosebumps, almost had tears running. So,
And you know, I need to add that a lot of what you've written in Can I Fly is about, you know, how, let's say, the reader can go about picking up snippets from your life, picking up certain qualities that you attribute would be essential to that journey towards achieving greatness, to becoming a good leader. And you know, a lot of leadership is to do with great selling as well. You know, CEOs, correct me if I'm wrong, but CEOs have to be great salesmen, right?
absolutely.
When you took McCormick to China to sell spices to the land that was known for spice, a lot of it had to do with how well you sold. And you know, that's why I have to ask you, Mr. Mukund. Typically, the art of selling is something anyone would study in any MBA textbook. And yet you saw the need to write this. What do you think was missing or is missing in the academia today that compelled the need to put all of this down on print and sell it in a sense while you talk about the art of selling, or not selling rather, but making people buy?
See, actually, in management schools, they teach more marketing, and sales is taught as a process rather than art of selling. And you know, selling is not just selling. You have persuasion in selling. You have negotiating in selling. You also have rapport building in selling, which people don't even understand today.
Right.
It's not taught in management schools. I wrote this book in 2014, and I wanted to self-publish it. But then one of the teachers of IIM who taught marketing and sales, he told me that why don't you give it as a prescription for IIM? And then I did, but nobody bought it. So, okay, and then I thought, okay, no, it's not taught in management schools. I'm currently on Sunday, I have IIM as well as IIM Udaipur logging on to me, and I'm going to do a selling skill program for them.
Right.
It's not taught. So that spurred me to really write this. And you're right in the sense what you said, you sell every day. You kind of persuade people to listen to you, persuade people to win relationships.
Yeah.
Selling is not about selling products anymore because it's transcended to selling, you know,
Yep.
if you have a relationship or a trust with the product, only then people buy these days. So I rewrote it after the COVID, when consumerism also changed quite a bit. So that's what really made me write this.
Right. So two different books, two different reasonings behind going about putting these words down, you know, on paper. But you know, the one common thing that I can see, you know, almost in both books is the need to reach out and, you know, head for the goal. And the goal being, in this case, to be a good leader, and in your book, to be a great salesman. But I have to ask you something that really struck me in Can I Fly, and you should read it if and you might resonate with what I'm talking about, was the relative richness that you refer to in the book itself. You just spoke about how it was the first time, you know, where at your buyer interview that you actually saw the sea from a skyscraper. Until you actually went about chancing upon that moment in time, you thought that the chawl where you came from was richness. You thought you were a rich person, and then you probably went to Sobo and saw what richness really was.
Yeah.
You know, I have to ask you, Mr. Satish, I was as curious as I am right now when I read this for the first time. Is that an endorsement of the imperative need to leave your hometown, leave your comfort zone, get out there, and actually go about breaking a sweat to get to where you want to be? Is that absolutely essential in the pursuit of being a good leader?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without batting an eyelid, I would say. There's always a price you need to pay to reach your goal. If somebody's saying that it's come onto you on your lap, either that person is fooling himself and the people. It's never that case. We all know that. I keep telling that none of us, or most of us, are not born with very lucky or popular last names. Example, Tata or Birla, or for that matter, Khan now. We are all having different last names where we have to make a position. As Mukund rightly said, you have to sell yourself. You have to position your own brand to establish yourself. Now, Everybody would have different goals. That's fine. But then I just wanted to take a minute to share what is this real insight, or what I'm talking about. Everybody wants to grow. Come on, there's nobody in this universe who says that I don't want to grow. Okay, but then that's just one part of it. And there's a lot of management students. There's a lot of information written out in the domain, which talks about the leadership qualities, the P&L management, the strategic management, the team building. There's a lot of that. Actually, the greatest of the greatest leaders who have gone to the top have fallen down in case they have. Let's take example of Vijay Mallya. Fantastic marketer. Kingfisher is thanks to him. Talk about Kochar, talk about Rajat Gupta, talk about Asharam Bapu, religious. They are all great leaders. But they fell down from where they were, not because they are not great leaders. They tripped on the soft virtues of leadership. And what I mean by soft virtues of leadership? The soft virtues, the way I define it, things like morals, ethics, integrity, honesty, humility. None of them are taught in school. I had the opportunity to study in Harvard. There also I have not learned this. But these are so mission critical for you to either go to the top, or more importantly, to stay in the top. That's very important. And if you trip on that one part, there is no second chance. Probably it's only Tihar jail, which could be the. And this book only talks about these soft virtues. It only talks about these soft virtues. And this particular, when one talks about whatever goal you want, but if you don't focus on these soft virtues, which is seldom taught, and being a person from South, our parents always instill that values. Yes, but that's as a kid. But once you grow up, you become a teenager. Obviously, they lose that influence on you, and then you think you are the smart aleck in town, and that just gets lost somewhere in stratosphere. So it's only to bring the thing back. See, guys, this is not philosophy. This is not pravachan. This is not gyan giving. If you don't do this, there is a big chance that there is very little chance you may even go up. And if at all by any chance you go up, there's very little chance you will stay at the top. So I think this whole book only talks about those soft virtues. And probably, I don't know, rightly or wrongly, I made my 20-year-old daughter as a critique for my book. So she's in Boston now. So after every chapter, I used to send the right chapter to her. And I still remember my first 2 chapters. She just cancelled 80% of the book.
So that was a lesson in humility.
I don't know about humility, but then she said, Papa, because there's a Papa in every human being, right, or every man. So I'm all about preaching, don't do this, don't do that. He said, these days students, I can see some youngsters here, we don't want to hear your preaching. Just tell us the story, we will distill the message. Just tell us what it is and we'll distill the message. So this book is all about stories. It's 80% stories, but the 20% Papa will not go away, right? So it has that.
But, very quickly, how much of, while this is great and soft virtues are no doubt, some of the key components in the book itself, that discomfort factor of moving out of your comfort zone, getting out there to see what the real world is, the real richness, so to speak, is that a big factor towards your journey of becoming a CEO, towards anyone's journey of being a CEO?
I'll be lying if I say no. Absolutely. When I was staying in a chawl, for me, because in Diwali, wearing some new dresses, going to everybody's house, banging the door. I mean, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, what do you know about life? That was like a frog in a well. And I thought this is the best place to be in. You can play cricket, hit somebody's house, you go, that auntie will scream at you, then you come back. But that's life, that's okay. But the moment when I went for the first time to this so-called Sobo, as it rightly says, as people know, it's South Bombay, which is a completely, you see the sea, right? So it's a bit hotty-totty there. But then that whole glamour enamored you, saying that, wow, there can be human beings staying in this. In fact, I remember asking my mom from Juhu Beach, saying that there's one building which was completely overseeing. I said, wow, in our building, if there are about 100 people staying here, maybe 500 people. Mom said, no, there's only one family staying here. I said, wow, is that possible? See, these are all very, very aha moments, saying that this is staying life king size. And no way, if you take the normal route, I could take that. So you had to take some different routes which normal people would not do. And that's what I did. Everybody went west and I chose to go to China in 2000. We were one of the first 50 families to go from India to China. But then I said, you know what? If I had to make it quick, make it fast, because that goal was impregnated into my heart and brain that I want to be a CEO at the age of 45, I need to take some steps. Either if I crash or I fly. But then I went to China, stayed there for 6 years, converted from a vegetarian to a non-vegetarian. That's a different story altogether.
It's mentioned in the book.
But you have to do all that sacrifices because ultimately that is one mission is driving you like crazy, and you had to take paths which normal people don't do, and everybody goes to US, everybody goes to UK, and I still remember my mom saying that, Ennappa, everybody is going to US, you're going to China, is everything okay with you in your career? It is, right? So, but then I think if there is one thing which catapulted me in my career, that was that 6 years in China, because nobody ever has done it.
Yeah. So
You need to take some uncharted road.
success lies outside your comfort zone, and that was a big key takeaway from the book. But keeping with common elements itself, the one thing I noticed when I read both books was how mirrors feature prominently as part of the narrative, both in Mr. Satish and Mr. Mukund's books, and with good reason. I'm going to start with you. Um, a lot of make the don't sell, make them buy, um, is to do with body language, confidence, setting out the right signals, and you endorse a practiced approach to cultivating this,
Right.
practiced in front of a mirror itself.
Right.
How important is that studied practice approach using a mirror in the business of conviction?
Right. See, body language is about 62% of first impression or rapport building. 30% is voice, and only 8% is words. So it plays a big role. And with distance, when you do conference calls, when you do telephone calls, the 92% becomes your voice. So if I say sorry to you and say, sorry, it's not possible, it's a different meaning. If I say, sorry, it's not possible, it's a different meaning. So the voice and body language, marriage is what people are concentrating these days. When you talk about mirroring, unless you get the right body language, it will not come in your voice. So for example, the air hostess, she has to greet a customer 3,750 times a day. So she has to practice 3 months in front of a mirror to make sure she smiles right. Otherwise, it's not natural. It cannot be natural if you do it 3,000 times.
Right.
So if you're in a call center and you're receiving 200 abusive or irate calls every day, you can't show empathy. You have to practice it.
Right.
So they look at the mirrors and practice and get that empathy and feeling into them. It's a cultivated art. You can take your old dance forms. Why did we teach the mudras, earlier on? And today nobody learns classical dancing. It's to improve the communication, because I said 90% and 60% comes from the way you communicate.
Right.
If I'm sitting like this in front of this audience, I'm meaning something else. If I sit like this in front of this audience, I'm communicating something else. And that happens. If you have I used to be a CEO of a company where I have 450 operators I had to talk to. If I talk to them like this, standing like this, and waving my hands like this, they will ask me for a raise every month. Okay, so you learn it on the fly, but it is an art.
And a lot of it also has to do with self-reflection.
Absolutely.
Genuflection, looking at oneself and then going about crafting.
So even my smile, I have 6 types of smile, which I teach also.
It's mentioned in the book, by the way. There are images there in case you're curious.
Yeah, but you have to get a mirror exercise to do it. You find it. I mean, you have to get, you're smiling at me so nicely, but that comes out of great practice. Okay.
I don't know, does it?
He's done it plenty of times. No TV guy cannot smile easily.
Okay.
So it's practice, it's mirror. And it's not just body language, but the voice is more important.
Right.
We have exercises which Lata Mangeshkar used to use for singing. It's because you need 4 different voices to come out of your system to connect with people. So,
and it's all about practicing and more
but
practicing.
you need a technique.
Yeah.
See, even Virat Kohli practices every day.
Yep.
But if someone didn't tell him how to practice and use the right technique, he'll still get out.
Absolutely.
So the book is about a technique. But you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's because it's a skill.
And self-reflection is, of course, a great blueprint to getting there. Mirrors also figure prominently in your book, but on a more philosophical level, don't they? For the benefit of our audience members who haven't read the book, tell us about the mirror test.
Okay, I should make a disclosure here. I thought for almost 3 weeks before I put that out in the public domain, because all of us have something personal in life, right? You don't want to put everything out there. And I still remember it was a Friday evening, me and my wife are sitting on a balcony, and I said, you know what, this is that incident I was telling, and obviously Wife knows it all, or maybe even more than you. I said, should I put this without
I was surprised at the candor.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. It takes a bit of, in fact, I remember when I wrote this
A lot
book,
of courage.
my global CEO said, saying that particular one, Satish, it takes courage to write, and I applaud you because you took this. But the point here is, if I'm trying to be honest, if I'm telling that is one of your virtue, and if I myself don't practice it, there's no more bigger hypocrite than me. What nonsense is this? So she was very blunt. She said, absolutely, you should put it. I said, okay, that's fine. At the end of the day, all husbands follow their wives, right? Am I right?
I wouldn't know. I'm not married
Okay.
yet.
So what happened was, there's a very interesting incident, but taught big things in life, and that is what eventually I've modeled this. And it's a 2-minute story, but a very interesting one. If there's one thing out of this evening, I would love each one of you to take back home. That's this. Here is the thing. Again, my first job in Bayer India Limited. My first after my MBA, getting as a management trainee. So after doing an MBA, somehow we feel that we are the most accomplished human beings in the world, right? So we feel that you got those 2 horns there. So we feel we are the smarter of the lot. And Bayer had a policy that for the first 1 month, every single management trainee who is taken into the company, they were reimbursing taxi fare from where you were staying to the office. And I was staying in Chembur, in a place called Chembur in Bombay, or now Mumbai, and that is almost about 30 kilometers. So they said, okay, you get to reimburse the taxi fare, and we are used to going train, which cost probably 2 rupees that time, and we had season pass, which made it 1 rupee. I said, and me and my buddy who was also staying close by, I said, why should we go? Let's take a train. And we go there, and then we would claim the taxi fare. And this was the pre-Ola and the Uber days, so there is no printed receipts.
No bills.
So no bills. So it's a self-voucher. So I would just say that it is, and it used to be 80 rupees. I still remember that. So 80 rupees, I would, we both will claim 80 rupees, to and fro 160 rupees, and they just paid us the cash. So 1 day, 2 day, it was a week, and that is pretty significant if you compare from the percentage of the total monthly salary. And the week happened, and it was a Sunday morning. My dad asked me, so beta, how is your work going on? How did you find your first week at this great multinational company? I said, wow, that is fantastic. Carpeted office, you can see the sea, people are there, a lot of expats, they really give you some very interesting assignment. I'm loving what I'm doing, but this company is a bit dumb. Why? I said, it takes me 35 minutes from Chembur to VT, and then you take a bus, go reach the office, spend only about 4-5 rupees for the whole journey, and they give taxi fare. We just claim it, and no questions asked, they go with it. And over the week, I almost earned about 700-800 rupees just in 1 week. So dumb. I mean, they just don't. But anyway, it is what it is. Obviously, my dad's colors went out of the face, and he said, son, I may not be as educated as you. I may not be as smart as you, but let me tell you one thing. And let me ask you one thing. Just now, what you just told me, just now, can you tell this to the finance manager of your company? I don't know. I don't think I'll do that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That I may not be as smart as you, but now what I'm going to tell you, if it feels right, do it. Otherwise, just forget it. So what? Every day before you go to sleep, go and stand in front of that mirror. Look into the eyes of that person you are seeing in that mirror. Ask one question. Have I done anything today? Which I will have no problem to share it with somebody who is close to me? It could be your girlfriend, it could be a mom, it could be a wife, it could be a dad, it could be anybody. That's okay. Or you may choose not to share. That's also okay. But will you have the comfort to share it with her or him? If the answer is yes, thumbs up. If the answer is yes, thumbs up. If the answer is no, you don't have the right to live as a human being from next day. Wow, so profound, so deep. It took me a couple of years even to understand that, friends. But I think there is a huge virtue in what he told. God bless is no longer in this world. And as leaders in our own mind, we are all accomplished people here. We all take decisions, and I have taken decision as a CEO, and I should admit half of the decisions were wrong. That's okay. But as they say, there is no pillow lighter than a pillow of light conscience. So one thing I can tell friends, that there are many decisions in life which I have taken is wrong, which I'm sure each one, there's nobody in this hall who is, can you raise your hands if anybody says that every single decision I've taken is right? No way, no way. But ever since then, I have practiced this mirror test in my own life. And one thing I can tell friends, never I have failed the mirror test. I think that's what makes a human being. And that's all I could say. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. Just prove it to yourself. Prove it to the person who you are seeing in that mirror. You have arrived in life. That's what I called it as mirror test. There's nothing called mirror test.
Absolutely. And I think conscience is so important when it comes to actually becoming a good leader, because at the end of the day, I think you are answerable to nobody but yourself. And I think that counts for a lot. But, in keeping with mirrors and keeping with, discussions and deliberations surrounding body language and decision making, I have to ask you, you just spoke about how it is so important in terms of voice, in terms of body language, in terms of the words you use, to actually use the right ones at the right time. So purely from a conviction point of view, and I ask this because your book is solely and mostly about the art of convincing. What are some of the common pitfalls that people make in terms of body language when they go about attempting a sale, not only in the literal sense, but in everyday conviction?
See, sales is about first rapport building,
Mm-hmm.
in which body language and voice plays an important role. Once you develop trust, then that doesn't become that important. There are rational factors which take over. But when it comes to negotiating or persuading, again, body language and voice comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest mistake people make is not being conscious of what they communicate.
Right.
That you never know till you have somebody tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Even most great cricketers get out because nobody told them how they got out and what they have to do.
Right.
So that's where the mistake people make.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is they feel that once you've reached a level beyond the sales guy, like you are a CEO or you are a senior manager, you feel persuasion, negotiation has to be done your way.
Mm-hmm.
And you can project anything you care.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why you don't get what is called a connect. And that's when your realization comes to your forefront. And all this is possible only if you realize and practice.
Right. So self-awareness is a very, very important aspect of going about making that sale.
Especially in Japan, especially in China, if you don't have the right body language and voice,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot sell.
Yeah.
And the Chinese, till second standard, they play sport, they don't read books, because they teach body language through sport.
Okay.
And they find that is most important to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So they are very self-aware of how they project themselves.
But you know what, Mr. Mukund, something I really enjoyed reading about your book was not so much about how you spoke at great length, or you write rather at great length, about how body language matters. It's the non-verbal cues that at the end of the day can make or break that sale. But there's so much intel to pick up from your book in terms of analysis of your customer. The one particular part that I quite enjoyed was how there's an animal scale to look at them in terms of grouping. So customers can be divided into rabbits, puppies, if I'm not mistaken. What are the other two animals?
Tortoises and owls.
Tortoises and owls. So for the benefit of our audiences, I know a lot of them perhaps haven't read the book yet. How do you go about figuring out who is who before you actually go about engaging in that body language, in those verbal communications to close that sale? What's the blueprint to finding out about your customer before going about deciding what you need to do?
So this is not something new what I've written here.
Mm-hmm.
There is something called psychographic profiling which people do. They
Mm-hmm.
don't do it as animals.
Mm-hmm.
But these techniques are mostly used for recruiting people to place them in the right jobs,
Mm-hmm.
or for grouping people in the software industry. A rabbit will group better with another rabbit, or maybe a puppy, because they're extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
But I experimented this for about 22 years and tested it
Mm-hmm.
on a different scale.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying customers are different animals,
Mm-hmm.
but we are all different animals.
Okay.
And you have to change your behavior if I have to convince you,
All
or
right.
persuade you, or negotiate with you.
Uh-huh.
So I was trained by Anand Sharma, who's a UN negotiator. he told me that unless you get into the psychographic profile of a person, you will never be able to persuade him.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And he did hijacking
Negotiations. Yes.
So I took a cue from him
Mhm.
and I developed this whole thing and tested it.
So very quickly then, for the benefit of our audiences, an owl is someone who?
They're more introvert,
Okay.
but they kind of they want to take firm steps only if they're convinced too much. They look for proofs.
Uh-huh.
They are generally skeptics, but skepticism is not wrong. They have maybe a lot of past experiences. So the way you handle an owl should be different from a rabbit, who is completely different.
Okay. All right.
Who are forceful. They like to dominate. They like to be aggressive. They like to go very fast ahead. So the way you communicate to them, the way you present something to them, the way you persuade them and negotiate changes.
And tortoises, what are their defining
Tortoises are
attributes?
a little bit slow. They're
Okay.
very steadfast. They're very systematic. They're very they dwell with data. They kind of analyze data before they take decisions. So you got to give them more data. You got to give them more time. You take step-by-step processes with them.
Okay.
And puppies are very friendly, talkative. Generally speaking, they get convinced easily.
Yeah.
But anybody can convince them, so they don't stay with you for a long time.
And once they develop a rapport with you, they tend to also take advantage.
With everybody, they develop rapport. And then
Right.
you need to figure out how to fix that.
So what's the technique to figuring out who is who? I know there's an audience full of people here.
Yeah.
Is there a 5-minute guide to saying, okay, that's an owl, that's a rabbit, that's a puppy? I'm just curious.
Yeah. 100 years people have spent in psychographic profiling.
Uh-huh.
So we say that don't look at what people, because everybody is in that behavior mode.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody in the audience is in that behavior mode. So you can't figure out who's who
Okay.
till you get them in non-stress mode.
All right,
If
interesting.
the boss is here, they'll get into behavior mode. If there's somebody else who's stressing them there, they'll get into behavior mode.
Uh-huh.
So the best is to give them a couple of glasses of beer. Don't give them 4, then they go beyond their behavior.
Much like what you did after your interview at Bayer.
But then there's
Yeah.
a prescription. It's a fine art. But you can do certain observations of body language which you cannot hide.
There's a lot of investment in
Eyeball
knowing.
movement,
Yeah.
breathing, the way you shake your hands. Now I'm on my behavior. But
We'll probably get to know you a little better, perhaps. I know we didn't discuss this at length before we came to sit down for this discussion, but you like sports a lot, don't you? I saw and read so many references to some sporting greats in the book. You referenced The Last Dance, that beautiful Netflix documentary about the Chicago Bulls' last attempt at the playoffs and the NBA title. You speak about Usain Bolt. You talk about cricket at great length. What is it about sports analogies that make leadership such an attractive attribute or quality to gauge and study?
No, absolutely. This is more of an lifelong observation. I should admit, I mean, I love the way Mukund articulated in different animals, the different psychographics which is coming up. If you really see any sport for that matter, it may be competitive, you may do it for a health reason, but there is always teachings and learnings in every sport, and all of us grew up playing sports, whether it's cricket, whether it's football. In fact, now I'm more into golf for a different reason. But then for people who understand golf, I would like to take that example because cricket and football has always been talked too much, and especially after this T20. I really don't want to talk about cricket. Enough said is enough. This is a game where actually it's a 4-hour game. For people who don't know, they would say, what is a small ball? They just keep hitting 4 hours. But if you really go to the depth of it, I'm enamored with this game. And I just want to give you one example. I had an opportunity to play a full 18-hole game which lasted for 4.5 hours with the legendary cricketer Kapil Dev.
Okay.
And I was asking him, so which, exactly like this, while playing golf, so which are the sports you have played, Kapil? He says, Satish, you name a sport and I played it.
Okay.
The football, the badminton, the racket, including the ice hockey. Like, wow, I mean, he's really persona. He's a sportsman in the real sense. But then he said, ever since I started playing golf, I stopped playing every other game. So that's how addictive it is. It's even worse than a drug. But then, why is that addiction? It almost teaches. It's like life, because nobody likes to die, right? Because they're addicted to life. That's what golf is all about. It teaches you life lesson every time you play. First, this game you don't play against anybody. You play against you. That's what life is all about, right? You're not to prove anything to 1.2 billion people. You have to prove to yourself. Number one. Number two is, on Monday, you may be fantastic. On Tuesday, you'll be literally like as if you have never played this game ever in your life. It teaches you humility. It teaches you humbleness. Don't try to be there. Just be grounded, buddy. You never know where it could hit you. It teaches you patience. That golf etiquettes are very, very strong etiquettes. That once you enter the golf course, make them fire or wind, you can't quit that golf course without finishing the game. So they're very strong. It used to be called a gentleman's game. But I'm just giving you as an analogy, just one of the sport which probably not many have played, and I just got hooked on to it purely for its intrinsic depth of that game. And once you get into it, wow, it literally teaches you quite a lot of lessons. And of course, you make good friends on the golf course. That's a different
Absolutely.
Stuff. But whether it's cricket, whether it's football, that's where I've used all those analogies, because people love sports, one thing or the other. So I was just trying to give some messages of life, messages of leadership through different sports.
And there are some amazing documentaries as well that, one can draw inspiration from, which detail how sporting greats went on to become who they were. You spent the last few minutes as well, Mr. Satish, talking about all these attributes: humility, empathy, in the path to becoming a leader. But is there one attribute or quality that you feel members of our audience, or future leaders of tomorrow, should give priority to above all else, in terms of, okay, if I want to be CEO at 45, or if I want to be a good leader tomorrow, or forget tomorrow, if I want to go to office tomorrow and become a better leader, a better team lead, a better chief correspondent, a better editor than I am today, what is that one attribute that you feel they need to take home with them among all the ones that you listed in the book?
Sure, it's difficult to pick up one. It's like asking a parent which child. But then probably I know I'm sitting in a city called Chennai, which this is where I started my career 27 years back. And I know each city has its own cultural anchorage, or what we call as USP, or a strong brand positioning. So I would choose a value which probably would resonate to many of us here, and that is something which I resonate very, very strongly, is humility. Humility, humbleness is something which I would pick up. And I wanted to illustrate that with a real life example of a person. By the way, this book is not a biopic, okay? It's about all the leaders, and obviously I know my life, so I've just sprinkled some of my stories. But then this is a story which happened in 2009. We were living in the US that time. I still remember it was Friday. I was playing a game of golf, and on my BlackBerry phone, there is a phone call which came that I'm speaking from White House. You and your wife are invited. I said, what? White House? Me? I'm sure it was one of my friends trying to play some prank on me, or some call center trying to. I said, okay, if you've got my phone, I'm sure you got my email address. Send me an email, I'll see it later. Because in golf course, you're not supposed to pick up the phone. Then after that, I saw it was immediately there's an email from whitehouse.gov. I said, wow, this is a credible note. And it was an invite from Michelle Obama, who was then the first lady. To cut the story short, what it was all about was Manmohan Singh, that time the Prime Minister, was making a visit to US. And Barack Obama had just become the president. It was 2 months into his presidency. It was the first state visit. And Manmohan Singh was traveling with 21 leaders from India. So the Tatas, the Birlas, you name it, they were all there. And as a reciprocation, as a welcome tea hosting by First Lady, they are supposed to invite 21 people of Indian origin who, according to them, have contributed to the US economy. I had no idea what I've done. I said, maybe it's a mistake, some other Satish Rao, but I don't care. If I got it, I just go. So we got best of our suits and got into limo, got into White House. Jyoti was still, wow, I can't believe that we are inside the White House. Okay, that's okay. And then the tea party began at 4 o'clock. Just 55, 60 people. And they were all networking, they were all talking. And then my wife Jyoti says, Satish, let's go to that person. There's a tall person at the end of that small little oval room in the White House, saying that I want to go and talk. I said, yeah, sure, let's go. And that person was none other than Ratan Tata. Why? Because she started her career in telco, the Tata Motors, which is now.
Yeah.
So I just want to go and tell him that I started my career in Tatas and just want to, that's like a believe it or not moment for me. I said, yeah, sure. So went there, we exchanged business card. He spoke to her saying that, young lady, there's no Tata telco anymore. It's Tata Motors. We talked about Nano that time, which he wants to launch. And then he looks at my business card and he says, young man, I was working for McCormick that time, which is a spice and seasoning company. I said, young man, can you please give my best regards to the owners of your company? I said, wow, this is a different level of PR. Because people say, hello, how are you? This is not a word. I said, okay, maybe Ratan Tata, that's fine. And then the tea party ended. They all were going in protocol. First was Joe Biden, that time was the vice president. They were all walking. And we as a host were supposed to stand. Ratan Tata sees me and my wife standing there. He breaks the queue, which we are not supposed to. And again comes and puts his hand on my shoulder saying that, young man, can you give my regard to the owners of your company? So, wow, there's something more to it. So immediately I came back, wrote to because we had no business with Tata, because it was a pure US food company. We had nothing in India at that time. So I asked the board, I asked the executive committee, does anybody know Ratan Tata, the chairman of $89 billion conglomerate in India? No reply. Absolutely no reply. Radio silence. So what is this? Anyway, 10 months later, this company, McCormick, ended up buying a company in India. So me and my global CEO were coming. So I said, you know what? This is one relationship I would like to nurture. So now I wrote to Ratan Tata, put a picture of me, Jyoti, and him inside the White House. He said he will meet many people. At least he will not forget the guy whom he has met inside the White House. I said, here is Satish. Me and my CEO are coming. We've just acquired a company. We'd just love to have a cup of coffee with you. If it happens, happens. Otherwise, no. A strong sales pitch. In 2 days, we did get a reply saying that most welcome, 4 o'clock, come to our head office and would love to meet up with Satish, you and your CEO. Okay. So normally we stay at Marriott, but I said to my boss saying that, no, we should stay at Taj because the Tata again sales techniques. So we stayed there, reached there sharp at 3:55. Here comes Ratan Tata in this huge chamber. We are sitting, I literally had goosebumps. I said, I can't believe I'm sitting in a room, just me, Ratan Tata, and my CEO, Alan Wilson. He comes, picks up a jug of tea, pours it, and for 1 hour, we were chatting, no business. And then after about 5 minutes, he said, so you must be wondering what I told you in White House, right? I said, yes, it's still intriguing. I have no idea. I told my people, but nobody could figure out. He said, I'll tell you why. He says, 40 years back, he was that time 60. He said 40 years back when he was a student, when he was studying in US, every summer holiday, he would spend a week in a family friend's house, which happened to be McCormick, who was that time the owners of the company. Then it became a listed company. Every summer, his dad, Naval Tata, would come. They were good friends. And he would spend a week there, just as family friends, just as vacation. He would go around the inner bay. He would go to the spice factory. And then as life would take, McCormick had his own business. He went into business. They just played, and nothing like that. They never kept in touch. He said, when I looked into this business card, my memory went back 40 years back. I felt so guilty. I felt so low. I felt such a small thing that here is a family with no questions asked, with no relation, with no blood relation, with nothing expectation, hosted me every single year. And I, like a selfish person, didn't even tell this great family one word called thank you. I didn't even bother to send them a Christmas card. I didn't even bother to tell them, hello, how are you? That guilt came out of me. So when I saw this card, it just oozed out. And today, friends, he was telling that 50% of that guilt is gone just because I could tell thank you to this great family. And if there is anything I could do in this country of India, please don't hesitate to tell. And then after the hours meeting, he comes down. If people who have seen the Tata House still has that old 120-year-old elevator where that kind of a iron thing. He opens that. He comes out because there's a footpath when you just come out of Tata House, and there comes the car. There was a Taj. He says, oh, you're staying in Taj. I said, yeah, bingo. We are staying in Taj. And he opens the door for us. I said, my goodness. Chairman of a $90 billion company opening and this comes naturally. It's not behavior. It's just natural humility. So the point here is, if somebody like Ratan Tata, who could spend an hour with no business interest, who could show all his humility coming naturally from his heart and not enacted or not going through any particular model, if he can be that way, who are we? What are we? What are we trying to tom-tom? What are we trying to do? I think that humility is very important. As we say, when you talk to a boss, if that guy is talking from 7th floor to 1st floor, you may listen because he's your boss. But the next moment it turns out, what the heck? And that guy will go out, right? But the best is when you connect with person from at the same level, he gives you that genuine respect. You talk to him at the same level. As my grandmother used to say, the best communication is that communication where even your grandmother can understand it.
Absolutely.
Don't try to give all
In
the
fact,
charges.
interestingly enough, that's also a lesson that is hammered down into our heads in journalism as well. When you write so that your grandmother can read and understand. So, yeah. But, you know, in keeping with staying humble and establishing a connection, like you just said, there's one interesting part in your book that talks about establishing connections through negotiation, which, you know, you write about how it is, you know, a very, very integral part of establishing rapport, of closing a sale, and to be more convincing. But I quite like the part where you also delve into when it is important to step away from a negotiation and back off, so to speak. Could you throw some light on the various facets of negotiation and why it's also important to know when not to negotiate?
Okay, many people don't understand the difference between bargaining and negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
No, bargaining is done on only one variable. Like you want to buy a basket of mangoes, you want to pay 2 kgs. If he says 100 rupees, you say 50, then you go on price till you get 75 or 80.
Right.
That's bargaining. But when it's negotiating, you throw in all the variables you have, you know, really, whether it's, you know, Alfonso's or, you know, quantities or, you know, where will you get it delivered and things like that. So in a negotiation, you may have a situation where the other person seems to be a little more powerful. And correct me, did you ask personal negotiation or professional?
Professional.
Yeah, personal, you always back off. Professionally, you may find that the other guy has an advantage.
Right.
We call it power of negotiating. It could be because he has more information. He has more power because he has a source of, you know, something which you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
So you back off to prepare better. So that you come back to the table with better equipped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have 3 things to, you know, need before you negotiate. Power of information, power of a belief, self-belief that you can do it, and the power that your boss has given you the permission.
Nice little checklist that to remember before going about
Because, you
negotiating.
know, otherwise the boss will back out and say, I never gave you this. Okay.
Right. So remember to keep these 3 things in mind. Anyway, like we promised, we're going to throw the floor open for questions.
Of course, I think nobody is flying like Elon Musk, but you also know the other side, what he is doing to Twitter and all that. So, from both of you, where would you place Elon Musk?
I don't know him. Okay.
And knowing is so important.
I haven't researched enough.
I just would like to add, as the auditor of Tata Sons and also auditor of AVT McCormick, immediately I was able to connect. One thing which Ratan Tata does even today is carry his own luggage.
Yeah.
That is all.
Yeah,
Luggage.
bags. He carries his briefcase.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You know, interestingly, since the question was asked, this hostile takeover of Twitter, in a sense, I don't know if I can call it hostile because, of course, he bought it out. But it's raised a lot of questions on the fine line between being an authoritative leader and being a bit of an authoritarian. And I know that there's a fine line. Do you care to weigh in on your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd agree. We don't know enough in terms of the motivation behind this. But as an onlooker and as a corporate citizen, being in the industry, having worked in markets like US and India, let's first get this straight, okay? Whatever he has done, it's not illegal. Let's get that straight, okay? It has been approved. He has acquired a company. He has paid money and he has acquired it, okay? Number one. Number two is every leader has a different trait. You can't tell that this leader is a perfect leader because he demonstrates this trait. This leader is a perfect leader because he demonstrates. No, they are all leaders in their own mind. I want to give one example. Steve Jobs. Today, the most adored company in the world is Apple, right? And we all know the story of Steve Jobs. He was fired from his company in this first stint because he was found unsuitable to run this company, correct? Then he went to another startup and then he was brought back. And he's the guy who converted a simple mainframe and a typical hard disk monitor company to Apple where it is now. What is his management style? He was absolutely his conviction on himself is unbelievable. He is almost like a superhuman. He's the one who used Chinese calligraphy to design the keypad because he believes in that. And you are talking about autocratic way. That's the ultimate in autocratic way. Because I want this, period. I will wait for 5 years till it is developed. But I don't want a phone where, if you remember the old phone, when you start putting a it will start making noise. He said, no, I don't want to. I will not launch till such time that is gone. He was eye on the detail to that extent. He was almost paranoid. But look at the product he has made. He has made our lives completely different. What is his leadership style? People would hate to work for a boss like that. But he created an empire. So I don't want to directly comment on Elon Musk. Probably he's damn sure on what he's doing. And that's the difference between owners, leaders, and today's way of owners who are technocrats themselves. He's a technocrat himself. He knows what he's doing. It takes courage to fire the entire first line of, and you think he doesn't love money? He loves money. But if he does that, he has something in his mind, which probably none of us know.
Right.
So I don't want to comment one way or the other. I would rather see positive that I would love to follow this guy where it goes. And I hope Twitter prospers. I hope all his businesses prosper. But it's very interesting leadership style, which we normally don't get to see.
Right, difficult decisions, and we'll just have
very,
to
very interesting.
wait to see where it goes in terms of what we're left with. I believe there was a question this side. Yes.
This is a comment for Mukund. This tradition of personality types with animals, no?
Right.
It's very ancient tradition.
Yeah.
Saraswati Mahal Library has one on fortune telling based on personalities
Absolutely.
of 5 birds. That's a comment. But the question for both the authors is, when there are times that you're really low, really sad for energy, everything is going wrong, what is one personal practice that you have that gives you hope to carry on?
Let's start with Mr. Mukund first, and then we'll.
I don't know. I mean, we all have stress somewhere, you know. You can't live without stress. And we all get stressed because of the personality we are. So I know my personality relates very poorly to stress. So I need to do certain behavioral changes, which, I mean, at least in public, I can take it out at home. But at least in public, you need to be behaviorally correct. So you do that. People will say, do some breathing and all. I don't know. I've never breathed. I mean, I breathe normally when I speak. I breathe normally. When I speak, I'm breathing because that's how you develop a chest voice. I am breathing like Lata Mangeshkar breathes when she sings. But in front of a customer, a Japanese customer once yelled at me so badly. And it's the worst thing you can take is when a Japanese yells at you. They rarely yell at you. So I couldn't, I just was at sea what to do. So I just told him sorry with the best empathy I could, you know, probably get in my face. That's what helped.
Right.
Yeah. But empathy is not easy. Empathy is also a cultivated art.
It is.
Okay. So showing it in your face. You show it inside your system, it always comes out. But getting it out to show it to others, it's another. So I managed him, and today he's my best friend. He's the president of Hitachi. Okay. So, but he endorsed my first book.
Okay.
I mean, I never expected him to endorse it.
So reflect within. I think that's something that we can take away from that. So what's the one thing you do when you feel down or when circumstances get to you?
Thanks, Mukund. I got some 1.5 minutes to think.
I'll toss the first question here next time.
I thought you would take it first.
No, everybody has low moments. Everybody has times when they really feel like a dirt, and it does happen. But then you're absolutely right. When you are when you're in office, when you are in front of 1,000 people, when you're leading, you can't because that's a job, right? You always need to pause because that's what becomes contagious, and you want that to be driven in the organization. But it does hurt you. It does hurt you. I remember when you were asking this, really one of the worst times I felt was my first 2 months when I went to China, when there was no Indian there, nobody had Indian, it was Diwali day. It was a Diwali day. And I was all by myself in China. I literally, I cried. I took my phone, spoke to my mom, said, "What kind of life is this? Diwali is supposed to be with your people, with the festivity, and they're Chinese, though they don't even know the spelling of Diwali. And I'm here all by myself. There's no family. My wife and daughter were still back in India." I said, "Is it still worth doing what it is?" And obviously, mom being mom, they would always go out of the way to console you, blah, blah, blah. And it took some grit. I cried on the phone. And there were instances, even after marriage, you do that. But the way I felt always is there can't be a better therapy than sharing. There
Then
can't be better
sharing.
than sharing.
Okay.
You need to have somebody. So for the past 25 years, poor Jyoti has been the victim of all my outbursts. But thankfully, she's the one who listens more, and by this time, you know who talks more. That becomes your sounding board, and you can be yourself with your wife or with your mom who has given you birth. So I personally found, yes, you're right. I have no idea about this yoga and the breathing techniques and all that kind of stuff. But whenever I have low, I need somebody to share and put that out of his system so that you know, at least you feel light, and the person whom you are sharing is probably closest to the mirror. It can come, and I think that is what has helped me. And sometimes a glass of wine helps.
So reach out and perhaps indulge in a little bit of wine while you're at it. Do we have other questions? Yes, ma'am.
This is more, I mean, thoroughly enjoyed the entire conversation. I haven't read the book yet. And this is not about the content or the topic of the book, but it's more about the author's mind. Because I want to ask you both if you have, while the thought of authoring or in the process of authoring, ever suffered imposter syndrome? Like, do I have the authority to talk about sales? I mean, I'm sure you've had successes and failures in sales, and you about leadership. Already confessed you failed a few mirror tests, right? So how have you had that imposter syndrome? And if yes, how do you overcome it? Because I've been an aspiring author forever, and I've not yet, seen light because I suffer this. And when I think of a topic, I'm always thinking, who am I? Perhaps I'm just in the path. So I just want some advice on, how do you deal with.
Right. So, am I good enough to do this? Am I an authority on this? And if you've ever had that, how do you get over it?
Brilliant, brilliant question. Very, very deep and insightful. The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Who are we? Who am I, first of all, to write? But as I confessed, that this book has been a COVID baby. I had nothing else to do, so I started scribbling something, which took a form of a book. And then probably what I felt, because all said and done, let's understand, however, let's call spade a spade. As much as we may say that, okay, we want to be humble, we are non-assuming people, but all said and done, we're human beings. Sometimes the arrogance, the one-upmanship comes to us. Let's get that straight. It does. If it doesn't come, you're not a human being. You need sometimes that little bit of superiority complex to achieve things in life. And you need that, especially students have to have that fire in their belly. Now, for me, the acid test was my own daughter. Okay, because I confess saying that I'm going to write a book on actual stories. Actual stories. So one of my big guilt coming out is I'm not going to teach something new. I'm actually taking real life stories which I have seen with my own eyes and ears. So there is absolutely no problem in taking intellectual property rights or blah, blah, blah. And some of the stories are my own. So I know what I'm talking. And even there, sometimes after 25 years, you tend to forget, right? So when you have a 20-year-old child and your wife who is fairly educated, they put you on track. Listen, don't tell that. This is not what happened. This is what happened. Either you write this. No, okay. Ultimately, there's a marketeer in you, right? You always like to spice it up. And I was a part of the spice industry for 20 years. So thoda to masala lagta hi hai. But it was not allowed. So my way of grounding myself was having these two people to put me to track, and I said, you have full liberty. Even my publisher may have it right or wrong. But if my daughter or my wife says no, that doesn't get printed into the book. So that's the way I try to be true to myself. And again, my book, it's not about preachings, it's not about gyan, it's not about wisdom, it's actually about stories. So it is actually the narration of the story which I try to be 100% authentic. After that, it's for you to take whatever lesson you want. So that's the way I overcome, because completely agree with you. We are not here to teach. There are great people in this world. Who are we? But I just try to put my couple of cents in that this is what is on the table.
So having a sounding board, in a sense, when you, yes, a conscience keeper to actually go about validating, that exploit that you're undertaking. Have you ever felt the imposter syndrome?
See, actually, when I wrote about sales, it was not difficult because 40 years I've been selling something in 30 countries. So I had the experience and I tested some of the things which I've written in the book for 22 years. But my English was terrible. She edited the first version and said, no way. And then I had 4 editors. So don't worry about writing. Today there's software, such good editing software that they'll fix anything you want. And most publishers, if you get a good publisher, they'll edit correctly. So if it's in the head, but you need to research. You just can't write. Research is very important. Sounding board is important, like Satish said. So I've written a fiction which I think is horrible, but my literary agent feels it's great. Some others feel it's bad. So I'm just thinking what to do.
I mean, this is really insightful. So it's all about getting the right people around you and sounding ideas and sounding content off them. And if they're really good people who, whose opinion you value, that could well shape the final product in a sense. More questions? Yes, sir.
Fish, I have one question for you and one for Mukul. Your book is all about live situations which you've captured and trying to tell a story around ethics, integrity, how to lead life in a proper way. How do you think this, along with the Ratan Tata example, which was a very interesting example, would resonate with the current generation of young people aspiring to join companies who have to embrace these particular thought process as they go along?
Again,
Let's finish off both questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question of don't sell, make them buy. I mean, it looks very attractive. It is a very attractive heading. But in real life situation today, what happens is every employer fixes a target. We are living in a commercial world where competition is driving all sorts of things around us, including pleasant, unpleasant, and all that. So, with targets being imposed on organizations and salespeople, how do they play this long-term test match through the processes that you mentioned? Because they prefer a T20 to achieve the target, which means shortcuts. How do we marry both?
Right. Let's start with you. So when you're under the pump.
So the second question.
Yes, the second
First
question.
question you take.
Yes. So when you're under the pump, how do you cultivate process?
See, you need to sell. Marketing can't win everything. Otherwise, it gets commoditized. So once you just have marketing is 4 P's, right? You decide a product, you decide a price, you decide a placement, and you decide a positioning. So once you've decided this, and you feel electronic media can sell it on its own, like Amazon, then you're commoditizing it. So there's no value proposition built. So you have to sell it, like you said, and you have a target. Now, earlier you had salesmen who came and sold it to you, but today you can't afford it because it's cost of selling has gone up significantly. Now, the new mantra is what I was able to do in 10 interactions with my customer, I should be able to do it in 3. So if I took 10 iterations to build rapport, negotiate, persuade, and close, now I have to do it in 3. That's why you need the techniques.
Right.
So if you're playing T20, you just need to have all the shots in your,
And then condense timelines and sell better.
Otherwise, you just keep playing and hoping for the best.
Absolutely.
And you lose time. Now, it's not return on investment today that matters, return on time invested, ROTI. And
Because-
many sales CRMs measure this.
Yeah. Time is
How
money.
long has it taken for you to acquire this customer and how sustainable is this acquisition?
Right. Time is money and money is time. Relatability, you talk a lot about it. I know for a fact that your daughter was your sounding board. So you actually had your first young audience then and there itself, especially as you kept sending her manuscripts like you were narrating to us. But in terms of getting a large young audience to consume some of the attributes that you talk about in Can I Fly, how do you do that?
hey, honestly, that's probably one of the genesis of my book is as the publishers always say, first define your target segment, right? So I thought I defined first as students, but eventually it started getting popularized at all different stages of life cycle, because it talks about leadership at different levels of in life. But then you're absolutely right, Anand. Is today's student, we all know that. I mean, we are all not in our at least teens and 20s. When we were in our teens and 20s, we all know that the competition to get where we wanted to be was significantly lower than what it is today. When we look at our children, if I had to get into an MBA, it was just because information was not that open. You just go fill up a form, you get it. And I still feel that probably I would not have made it to MBA now, because it's so damn competitive. The life of young students are really, they have to be one up. 99.9 and 99.8, there are 50 students. That was never the case in our case, right? That is how it was. So, what probably I would blame this generation, but they have to be competitive. And when you're so goddamn competitive, you need to literally wish aside everything just to see that you reach your goal. Like the example you're talking about, cricket. Cricket during that time when Vishwanath and Gundappa, Vishwanath and Prasanna and all, look at their physique, look at their, okay, but then they were also skilled people. But today's cricketers, look at the way they eat. I mean, look at Virat Kohli. He's a vegan. Why? He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't eat. Because he wanted to maintain that body mass index. Look at the professionalism which has come into this cricket, which is not the case before. So the point I'm trying to make is, today the world is far more competitive now, and maybe 20 years down it may be still more competitive. God knows what it will be. So when you are in that kind of a cat race, when you are in that kind of, either you get it or you miss it, it is very obvious for that young 20-year-olds to bypass some of the things which they can afford to bypass, because they want to reach that goal. Okay, theek hai, koi nahi dekh raha hai, okay, nobody is seeing, that's fine, I'll do it. It's very obvious, and it's very tempting to do that. So, to your point, that begins the first recipe of disaster. That first time when he feels or she feels that nobody is watching me, let me do it. That's where that person trips. They may get some other goals, but eventually we all know that it's like karma, right? What happens, it comes back to you with double the vengeance. So this whole book is actually to hit that point that yes, we understand the competitive environment, we understand the stress you're going through, but please don't take shortcuts, because as we always say, there is no right way to do a wrong thing. Don't do that.
Right.
Don't miss it. I think that's the...
Right. Do we have more questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Can we have the mic?
Yeah. I do find a lot of success stories in your books. It's apparent, the face of it. If you see all the success stories, if you agree, I would say that they're all absolutely unique. Based on this uniqueness, are we trying to theorize these success stories and try to give one particular formula? Every success story, be it Ratan Tata or be it even Narendra Modi, for that matter, everyone is unique. Now, if I try to emulate any one of them, will I be successful? One. And all the postulates and all the theory which has been proposed, it's all, well, we're going to talk about history. Those are documented. Now, based on that, we derive theories, we derive logic. But does it really work for a layman is my question.
Can one size fit all? I think that's the long and short of it, right? Yeah. Let's start with you.
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at it. You're absolutely right. If anybody is telling that this is the secret mantra to success, I think that person is the best salesman in the world. You can't do that. There's absolutely not, because there are different kinds of leaders. As you rightly said, Narendra Modi is a different kind of leader. Joe Biden is a different kind of leader. Everybody, Putin can be a different kind of leader. That's fine. It's all different. So, straight calling spade a spade answer? Absolutely not. There is not one formula for a right leader. And so, you should not emulate a leader. Don't emulate a leader. You can never be successful. That's why they say, even in the film, in the Bollywood, don't try to be like somebody. create your own position. That's also one of the stories I read, is that Irfan, who is no more longer there. Everybody were coming with six pack and all that kind of stuff. Shah Rukh Khans and Salman Khans of the world. This guy was just like an ordinary person, and he became a superstar just because he was just outside of the rut. He didn't copy anybody. He had his own style, and that became popular. Anupam Kher. So the example I'm trying to give is, don't try to emulate. First, let's get that straight. Second point you're talking about is the theories, okay? There are certain things in life, for centuries, it has never failed you. Tell me one theory which says that tell lies and you'll be successful. Come on, which culture will tell you that? Violate on your values, fantastic. It is good. These are absolutely basic, absolutely basic. And if you don't obey to that, maybe you may be successful for time being. You may trip that or nothing may happen. That's okay. But fundamentally, you know that that's not right. So the point I'm trying to make is, try to emulate the characteristics. Try to emulate the attributes. If you feel you can adapt it. If humility you feel is good, please try to emulate. That's okay. We are talking about the emulating the characteristics and attributes. If you're trying to emulate a leader, no, then you are actually compromising your own identity, because every human being has his own identity. Don't compromise on that. You have your own uniqueness. Try to leverage that. So my point here is, trying to emulate a leader may not be the right thing. Try to emulate the characteristics and the attributes which appeals to you. Please follow it. Simple submission.
Can there be one formula to selling?
To selling, no. Selling is not a process, okay? So there can never be a formula.
Right.
It's like doing a lot of things which, I just take an example, like a carpenter comes with all his tools, but then looks at your job and fixes and uses the right tool to fix the right job. He doesn't use all the tools to fix one job. So you need to inculcate a lot of skill sets or tools, and each leader will give you something different. For example, there are 12 styles of leadership, I've been told, but not all 12 styles of leadership work all the time. So you use the style for that situation, exactly like in sales. Whatever customer puts in front of you as a situation, you got to bounce it with the right way.
Right.
So there's nothing which will fit everything, but you need the tools. The carpenter cannot go with his hands and say, okay, I'm going to do a drill. So you got some
Absolutely.
You got to acquire these tools.
So I guess size the field up and then take a call depending on what the circumstances are. Do we have more questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
In a kind of undisciplined, unregimented society like ours, where individuals, unlike the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, who are more susceptible to mass discipline, could humility and humbleness in a leader then be taken as a sign of weakness? And would therefore leader have to give some more importance to another attribute which may or may not be the opposite of humbleness and humility?
I'll let you take that because I think you deal a lot with humility, and I think it's a very valid question, because in the year 2022, I think almost all our world leaders pride themselves on bravado, on machismo, right? So in the world we live in, and I struggle to think of one who does not. I think that's also a sign of the times we live in. Where does humility, sorry? Yes, absolutely. A glowing exception. So where does humility find a place in all this show of bravado and machismo?
No, first I should say that I wish you did not put me on the spot, because for people who don't know, probably this is the aha moment for me today. Here is a person who is asking me this question 32 years back. He was my professor in MBA. Okay? So a professor asking me something like this, I'm absolutely humbled. What can I tell to him? I have to just do like this. No, but then I'll sort of attempt, Beur sir, of whatever little probably we have learned in our life journey. That absolutely correct. That many a times humility can be considered as a weakness. Many a times. There is absolutely no two doubts about it. And probably that is where maybe Anand, whatever this institution has thought through, probably as the genre of today's session is selling skills and this leadership virtues, I would probably try to connect this in a very extempore manner, is trying to be just humble in your everyday life, whether it comes to business, whether it comes to your college if you're a professor, or whether it comes to your day-to-day life. Just by taking that one virtue by itself can be a bit naive, can be a naive. So you need to have salesman skills. You need to have that because ultimately you are an actor in this world. You have to do your job. You have to do your, what does Gita tell when Krishna was telling to Arjuna that don't fall into your emotional this thing. You have come here to do your job. You better do your job. You are a warrior. You better do it. So somewhere you need to get that into yourself, and then you are getting into a persona which probably is not you, but you are here to do a job where you are supposed to inspire. For example, imagine a major in a battlefield gets into his weak movement and say, oh, you know what, this particular gun, I've never used it, but please go and try it. God, what kind of message is giving to his soldiers? You need to show that sense of a bit of arrogance, a bit of upmanship, a bit of superiority complex. That's the only way you charge your people. So that's where probably the techniques, that's where probably the skills come in, where you imbibe in you, because you are at that particular point of time, you are there as a messiah of that particular task which you have to accomplish, and you have to get that from inside just to inspire and do that particular job. And as long as you don't violate the principles of honesty in this, you don't violate the principles of ethics in that, that's okay. But at that time, probably it is humility, but with a sense of karma, which you want to do it at that particular time, does help you to deliver your job as a professional. And if you don't do that, you will be a naive, humble person without delivering the task. And you
don't want to be that. I think we'll have time for a couple of more questions before we close the floor. Yes, unless there's somebody else with a question in the audience. Let's have the gentleman there take a question first, sir. Yes.
Hi, just wanted to ask you like how important it is for younger generation to maintain their temperament, and how does it play a role in becoming a better leader? Because these days I think the younger generation is a little emotionally, if you have a bad point, to come up after that, it takes a little bit of like, mental strength, I would say.
Mhm.
So what would your advice like?
Right. Let's start with Mr. Mukund first. Temperament.
See, actually, younger generation has a lot of information. Okay, they lack skills because they've been born in an era where skill development was not given so much importance. So that's why you don't have this. You get into a situation where you don't know what to do. You need skills to know what to do. So first thing, the younger generation. I am doing a lot in this. I'm hitting colleges to make sure the skill level is up in India. There's too much knowledge focus. There's very little skill focus. So if you have the skills to do it, you will do it right. But the information overload is so much with the younger generation. They must download the information thing and put up their skill overload, I think.
Right. Skill over info.
Skill and info balance has to be.
Right. What's the one key ingredient that this generation should take home with them to temper their temperament, in a sense?
just try to be less distracted in life. I think this generation has too much of distraction.
We were talking about attention spans a little while ago, weren't we?
Exactly. I mean, because in our times, other than newspaper and that 7:30 news and Sunday movie, what else we had? Nothing. So there was absolutely no. I still remember as a 21-year-old boy, when I came to Chennai, I would go to the beach and eat some peanuts and come back. There's nothing more to do. Excuse me. Whereas now, wow, you look here, Facebook, Twitter, dung, and if that is less, one girlfriend ditching you, oh my gosh, my life is over, done, bomb. I mean, all that kind of stuff is so rampant. That's because this, as you rightly said, this whole information explosion has happened, and there is something called, as they say, the FOMO. I learned it from my daughter. Okay? FOMO,
Fear of missing out.
which is fear of missing out. If I don't do that, oh, I'm going to miss. If I'm not in Instagram, what will my friends say? We never had all this.
So the importance
I
of
think just
disconnecting.
Stop getting distracted.
Right.
I mean, I remember she had this rule when we were in US that Wednesday was the no screen day. I'll tell you, I used to love it. So no screen, no telephone, no phones, no laptops, no TV, no this thing. So we had no choice but to talk to each other. Simple, but I was ashamed saying that, my goodness, somebody has to impose this as a rule. Can you stay without a screen for more than 1 hour? No, I was trying to 1 hour because it's 1 hour we have been here.
The importance of disconnecting is so crucial. Do we have other questions? If not, I will end with Sir right in the front. Do we have a question?
Mentioned that we are in a country wherein there's more emphasis on the knowledge rather than on the skill. Was it not the other way around a couple of decades back?
I'm not sure. When we grew up, skills were natural because we interacted more with peers, you know. But I'm not sure I have evidence of that.
Right. Now we interact a lot more with devices. Right. Let's wrap up then with one last question.
Yeah, I think COVID changed the world like we never expected. And there is going to be another COVID or whatever it is. And he had a very interesting thing to say that he wrote the book thanks to COVID. And it has happened to many of my friends. And my own case, I started doing my training videos only during COVID. So it has been, in a way, helpful. But how would you fly in a COVID-like situation is the question for you. And the question for you is coming from my practical experience. We are auditors of a company which makes home appliances. There was no salesman, there was no travel, so expenses were saved. Salaries were cut by 20%, and the sales went through the roof. They did extremely well. Now, there were a lot of reasons, like the small scale industries could not, and people were staying at home, they had to go and somehow buy the home appliances through Amazon, Flipkart, and all that. But can such a situation happen? That we think that, let's say, sales is important, marketing is important, then we don't realize that without that also it can happen.
Yeah.
You know, markets have been turned upside down in some cases.
We'll come to you in a bit. Let's start with you. COVID, the limitations of a pandemic, can you fly?
Okay, I want to answer that question with a definition. How do you define fly? Okay, each one may have a very, very different definition of flying. Maybe even if 10% of the people today felt that, okay, 1 hour we were really flying, fantastic. Or somebody say that that was waste of time, that's okay. It's all individual's definition. Now, to answer a question on COVID, absolutely. I think this is a pandemic which the world is seeing after 100 years. Who would have thought that you would be locked up in your house for 3 months, not even going out? I mean, there were your own relatives, your own dear ones breathing their last, and you couldn't even go to the cemetery. What nonsense! I know a friend of mine who could go to the last journey of his own mom. What kind of human life is this? Absolutely, no doubt about it. But there is always an opportunity in the worst of the situation. And I would say that yes, for me, 2 years was absolutely flying. Absolutely. Thank God, touch wood, none of my relatives, all were safe. We did have in our friend circle some of the very sad stories, but overall it was fine. Now, my definition of flying is, I should admit that in my entire career, because of the way, at least we have been 20 years, we are out of the country, I never got to spend time with my parents the way I spent in these 18 months. I was playing carom with my dad. I was playing Ludo with my mom. I was trying to teach my mom the golfing this thing in the balcony. What? This would have never happened had it been a normal life. This book, which probably I would have never thought I could capture the 30 years of my learning into something like this. If COVID would have been there, would not have been there, this book would not have got birth. This is probably our second child after my daughter. Would have never happened. But that doesn't mean people keep asking, will you write another book? I said, no, never. Because this is a COVID baby. I don't want this world to go through this COVID. Not at all.
So take challenges and turn them into opportunities.
But was it flying? Absolutely. In terms of family time, I'm sure all of us became really more screen time. What screen time? Nothing is TV. It was all over horror stories. We just switch it off and don't want to. I know from CNBC, but then we didn't want to see the news because it's all horror things, right? So you don't want to see all that stuff. The serials were all telecasted. So from a family bonding, from intellectualizing, from your own reflection of your life, from some things which you never did it in life, it was fantastic. But yes, life went through So there is always a flying time. I don't want to comment on the business side. Well, I'm just because we are all connecting here as individuals and persons. Probably if you take that slice angle of Square Cut that way, I think it taught us a lot of things about human connect, personal connect. Not everything is shosha, but there's something which is very, very grounded. And just getting out of the house to go for a walk is a luxury, which we realize the importance of it, and you importance the some of the usual things which we take for granted. You understood the meaning of it.
A flight of a different kind in that case. Yes, sales when, autonomous sales in a sense, right?
So I have to define what is sales. In our whatever we have defined it is actually happened only if you have harnessed that relationship. Only then it is sustainable. Otherwise, it's just sales numbers which auditors will put on a balance sheet or on a P&L. Okay, so if you have relationships, today people buy far beyond products. They buy trust. They buy culture around.
The very first chapter of your book deals with that. Yeah.
They buy culture around the brand. They buy convenience. That's why Amazon is successful. They buy flaunt. I'm with the Samsonite, so I'm living this lifestyle. They also buy, buy one more thing, which this COVID, post-COVID, it's thrown up, and that's very difficult for people. Even Kotler, Philip Kotler, the father of marketing, says they've gone into what's called life simplifiers. So when you simplify your life, they buy something beyond just products. That you can't do by just automatic selling. That's a number you can never sustain unless you know why it has happened. So salespeople are required to finish the sale. Marketing people are required to put the sale in place. But unless salespeople finish it, you can't get that relationship.
Right. And just to clarify, no other book coming up next, or is there one more in the pipeline?
She's pushing me, but so far it is no.
And when is yours next out?
I don't think it'll be. I don't want it out.
Okay.
My literary agent is pushing me to get it out.
And what's it about?
It's a life story of 3 young people living in a simple chawl type of household in Bangalore.
And their adventures.
Struggling with society and inhumanness of people around them.
Very quickly, who were your favorite authors growing up?
I'm not a big avid reader, I should admit, but whatever, maybe that is where I leaned as itself. For example, the favorite author was Abdul Kalam.
Okay.
The Wings of Fire.
Wings of Fire.
That just brings in an inspiration. And I used to love reading those kind of books.
And anyone you drew inspiration from?
I didn't draw inspiration to write this book, but my favorite author is P.G. Wodehouse.
Wow.
But his audiobooks are fantastic. I don't know if you've listened to them. Really with good audio backups.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we've gotten to know a little bit more about Mr. Satish Rao and Mr. R. Mukund, at least a lot more, to the men than the books they've written. I would seriously urge you and recommend that you read these books. They're amazing insights into leadership and the fine art of making a sale. And on that note, I'd like to thank both you gentlemen. Thank you so very much for doing this. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Over to Mr. Anand.
Thank you.
In another institution where I'm involved, Balaji is also involved, we were debating whether to bring out a book in relation to a very legendary lawyer. And one question which the trustees posed to us was, is book reading a dying art or still is it alive and kicking? These 2 books have demonstrated that they are still not only kicking, but they are very aspirational and they are really influencing people's thoughts, process, how they live their lives. So the printer also told us that 80% of people who read have come back to physical reading, moving away from electronic to physical touch and feel book reading. So that's a good sign. So book reading will not go away, it will not fade away. But I must really thank both the book writers for having put all these things together in a manner which resonates not only with the audience here, but is going up on YouTube 48 hours from now. I'm sure a lot of people who are not present here for various reasons will be able to read, understand, digest what it really means. And 2 very fascinating tales to have been conveyed through the mechanism of book writing. Jude, very special thanks to you.
Thank you.
You are a very, very busy man.
Not at all. Thank you.
Put your heart and soul together for this particular mission. And we at Chennai International Center will continue this sojourn of us to get into book discussion on a regular basis. Incidentally, our property is also not only identified, it's going to bear fruition in a few months from now on. Work is on. So we're looking at very exciting times for the CIC as well. So a lot more events coming up, and thanks to the support of the audience, I'm sure we will do. We'll pull along as we have been doing it in a much faster pace. So thank you, Satish, thank you, Mukund, and thank you, Jude, and thank you, audience, for being a very interactive and collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you.